Hello, whisperers. Welcome to the channel. If you enjoy tonight's tale, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. It helps more than you know. Now, dim the lights, and let's begin tonight's story. I won't lie, the bird ride in was quiet in the way only men who know what they're walking into can manage. Nobody cracking jokes, nobody fidgeting, just the thrum of rotors and the green wash of NVGs across faces I've trusted through more nights than I can count. We'd been briefed, properly briefed, zombies. The word wasn't laughed off or whispered in code like some black site rumor. Command spelled it out on the tarmac at Bragg. Non-human hostile entities, infection vector through bites and blood, high aggression, no surrender, no fear. Kill shots required to the brain. That was the mission. Contain, extract, survive. The four of us, Razor, our breacher, Holt, our saw gunner, Vega, sniper, Overwatch, and me, had 12 hours to move into the dead zone, pull a CDC scientist and his data case out of a safe house, and make it to an exfil site before the city was written off completely. The clock started the moment our boots hit asphalt. I checked the mag on my M4 one last time and glanced across the bird. Razor had his shotgun resting against his plate, eyes closed, lips moving in that quiet pre-fight ritual of his. Holt was stripping and reloading his belt like he always did when nervous, metal links clinking soft against gloves. Vega just stared out the open side of the Black Hawk, expression unreadable behind his NVGs, calm as ever. The crew chief leaned out, shouting over the rotor wash. 90 seconds. The city spread beneath us, not so much a city anymore as a burn scar. Fires flickered in parking lots, smoke hung like a blanket, and what traffic remained was frozen in place. Cars slammed into guardrails, buses jackknifed, 1,000 shapes left mid-flight and never finished. Through the headset I could hear sporadic gunfire, then silence. It didn't sound like war. It sounded like something worse. LZ is hot. Pilot called back. Multiple contacts moving. We didn't need to ask what kind. We roped down fast, boots slapping into broken pavement. The Black Hawk peeled away almost immediately. Rotor wash chasing trash and ash into the night. Then it was just us. 4 operators and a city full of dead things. Stack up, I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. We moved in textbook formation toward the safe house 3 blocks down. Federal building, reinforced windows, fallback location for emergencies. Supposedly the scientist was still inside, broadcasting on a shortwave we'd picked up. But the last few minutes of transmission had been pure panic and breaking glass. We crossed the first intersection under Vega's cover. Street was a mess of overturned police cruisers and broken storefronts. Blood pooled around a city bus like an oil spill. I caught the faint hiss of something wet, dripping inside it. Then the moan. Not the kind you mistake for wind or machinery. Human vocal cords stretched past human limits. One low, drawn-out note that makes your chest tighten like instinct. Knows what's coming before your head catches up. Contacts shuffled into view 30 meters out. Civilian clothes, torn, soaked. Faces smeared black with dried blood. eyes reflecting faint green in our NVG glow. Engage, I said. Holt dropped the first burst, controlled, precise. 3 rounds, one skull bursting like a watermelon. Razor swung shotgun left and cleared another. Vega's suppressed rifle snapped from rooftop angle, head clean off one staggering toward us. I fired 2 of my own, muzzle flash white against the NVG glow. Heads popped, bodies dropped, and for a moment, the street was ours again. But it didn't feel like a win. We reached the safe house perimeter without another hit. Razor cut the lock on the side door with a breaching charge small enough to sound like a car backfiring. Inside smelled like rot and antiseptic, a combination that turned the stomach. Blood smeared across the linoleum in half-moon arcs where something had been dragged. We cleared floor by floor. No wasted chatter, just call-outs. Left clear. Stairwell clear. Moving. My gloves stuck against dried blood on the railing as we ascended. Second floor. Claw marks deep enough to score drywall. Third floor. Broken door frame hanging on one hinge. And there he was. Dr. Halperin, middle-aged, thin, eyes wild behind fogged glasses. He sat against a filing cabinet with a pistol shaken in both hands, aimed straight at the door until we identified ourselves. He didn't lower it right away. "You came," he whispered, voice cracked. "They said they would send someone. I thought maybe they wouldn't." "Package secure," I called softly into comms. Holt posted at the stairwell, Razor covering the windows. Vega set up overwatch from the opposite side of the room, glassing the street with his rifle. Halperin finally dropped the pistol into his lap, chest heaving. Then he said something that told me this mission was already worse than it looked on paper. "It's not enough just to get me out," he muttered, fumbling for a case half hidden under his coat. This is everything. Proof. ViraClean made this. They'll burn the city to bury it." I met Razor's eyes. We didn't speak. Didn't need to. Outside, the moans started up again, louder this time. We didn't linger. I slung the scientist's case across my chest like a second plate and put him in the middle of our stack. Razor led, Holt behind Halperin, me pushing the tail, Vega floating where he had angles. The building had 2 ways out, the stairwell we'd come up and a fire escape that looked like it hadn't been touched since the Clinton years. We chose the stairwell. Less noise, less metal to rattle. "Lights," I said, and we all clicked our IR strobes to low. To our naked eyes, the hall was black. Through our NVGs, the world was a sick green whisper of doors and bullet holes and dried footprints going both directions. "Sound discipline," Vega breathed. 2 blocks east, I count 50+ shifting. Not moving yet. "I heard them," Razor said, soft. "Don't poke the hive." We flowed down the stairs, 1 flight at a time. Razor went slow, muzzle high, shoulders squared. He touched the walls with his offhand to feel vibration before we turned each landing. Halperin breathed like he was trying to shove the air back out of his lungs. I tapped his elbow once. "Easy. Breathe low." First floor smelled like a hospital dumpster. There's a point where rot stops smelling like food and starts smelling like a math problem someone left in the sun. This was that. I pushed the thought away. Focus on what you can control. Geometry, angles, distance. Razor put an ear to the door. Nothing close. He looked at me. I nodded. He popped the latch and shouldered through. The city night hit us with cold and the hiss of burning tires. A police light bar still spun on an abandoned cruiser, bathing the block in a pulse of dead red. That strobe messed with depth, turned the street into slices. Shadows jumped in the gaps. We moved. On the corner, a pharmacy sat open like a mouth. Shelves knocked over, white pill dust smeared across tile like frost. Behind the counter, someone had tried to write help in tape. They didn't finish the P. Eyes left, Holt whispered. 2 shufflers in the alley, 1 crawler near the mailbox. Quiet kills, I said. Vega put 2 rounds into the crawler's head, soft suppressed snaps that felt like someone clapping from far away. Razor and I took the alley. It was narrow, brick to brick, the kind of place you could smell the city bleeding out. The 2 turned toward the movement, and that was it. A blade and a buttstock, and both dropped like disconnected appliances. Halperin flinched at the wet sound. It doesn't change back, he said to himself. It doesn't change back. Stay with me, Doc, I said, feet where I put them. At the end of the block, our map said cut across a small park, then past a community center to a parking garage with sightlines. The park looked wrong in NVG, grass too bright, benches like bones. A sprinkler clicked on somewhere and sprayed a perfect arc across a patch of blood. For a second, I watched water beat on it and roll like it was plastic. My stomach did a slow turn. Don't look for metaphors. Just grass. Just water. We ghosted through the trees, stepping on dirt, not gravel. Holt's saw hung heavy and quiet at his chest. He hated not shooting. I could feel it. That gun was his way of saying no to the world. He'd get to say it soon enough. Halfway through the park, a playground creaked. My heart went into my throat before my head caught up. It was wind on chains. The swing moved and made an old, tired sound. Movement right, Vega said, calm. Street level, counting. 20, no, more. They're following the siren flash. We froze down into shadows that were shadows again, not the glowing kind. The horde drifted past like a tide. The first ones moved fast, then slower. Eyes were wrong, mouths hung open too far. You think you'll get used to the sight. You don't. Halperin shook. I put my hand on his shoulder. He didn't look back. He watched them like he was counting bones. We cleared the park and hit the community center. Doors chained, windows cracked. Razor cut a loop of chain with his bolt cutters. Slow, tension on the links so the snap wouldn't ring. Inside, the foyer was piled with donated coats and bags. Someone had tried to make this a shelter. It didn't take. We went room by room. A basketball rolled across the gym floor when we opened the doors, and I almost shot it. Every sound had weight. Every echo felt like it could break glass on the other side of the building. Why this route? Halperin whispered. Less open street, I said. More cover. You want open? The open is where they run. He swallowed. They're attracted to certain frequencies. It's not just noise. We tuned an auditory marker in the lab to test swarm response. A range bias somewhere around He stopped himself. Sorry. Say it, Vega said, eyes still on his scope. Say it so I can hate the right people. Halperin's face folded. Then he talked. The virus didn't just copy itself, he said, voice thin. It carries payloads, behavior modifiers. We spent months arguing about it, and then someone stopped arguing and coded the parts in. There's a scaffold protein that binds to glial cells, and we found, in animal models, you can drive the host toward light and certain pitch ranges with almost perfect reliability. It makes them find each other. Pack density increases transmission. Transmission increases numbers. Numbers make panic. Panic makes control. Razor said, flat. Halperin nodded, eyes on the floor. The case has the chain of custody, batch IDs, sign-offs. You ask me why this route. Because we have to get to your evac and not die on the way, and right now, the siren on that cruiser is the biggest magnet on the block. If it stops, we become the loudest thing. I felt something in my chest go cold and stay that way. Someone coded the end of the world, and they commented their work. I wanted to ask why. Didn't matter. We keep moving, I said. Garage is 2 buildings over. The stairwell up smelled like dust and old oil. Good smell. Boring smell. We took the first 3 flights in silence, boots touching the edges of steps, center clear in case something had left a slick there. At the 4th, a door was wedged with a mop handle. Behind it, something pressed once and then went still, like it had remembered us and then forgot. Razor moved to pull the handle. I put a hand on his wrist and shook my head. Not our mission. We came out onto the garage, and the air hit different. Wider, colder, touched by wind. The city opened up in front of us in tiers. Low buildings, taller ones beyond, a black river cutting through like a scar. In the NVGs, fires were blown out white cores with halos, like stars had fallen and gotten dirty. Overwatch here, Vega said, climbing the lip of a concrete planter and dropping into prone. Good fields to the east, moderate north, poor west. Copy. Holt, set the saw on this wall. We're not staying. We're passing through. Holt kissed his teeth, but he did it. Belt out, bipod down, muzzle just over the lip. He adjusted his position like he was remembering an old argument with gravity and settling it his way. I keyed the mic. Raven, this is Ghost 2. Rooftop of the Jefferson garage is clear. Requesting extraction window. 1+1 packs. Hot LZ assumed. The radio hissed, caught, and a voice came back wrapped in static. Ghost 2, Raven actual. Copy your location. We can't commit to a set down. Possible fast rope pickup if you can clear a circle. Define clear, I said, dry before I could help it. 0 bodies in a 30-meter radius, the voice said like he was reading a menu. Recommend alternate LZ. I looked at the roof. It was the size of a grocery store. 30 meters felt like saying, make the ocean flat. Alternate? I asked. Grid follow, Raven said, and rattled off coordinates 3 blocks deeper into the city, where the buildings leaned close and the roads narrowed to slot canyons. Great. Copy all, I said. I almost asked for a timeline, but there was no timeline. There was only us and the night and what we could carry. We started moving again. Down the far ramp, across a side street where a barber pole still spun because no one turned it off, and into an office tower with 2 glass doors and 400 fingerprints smeared across them. Razor broke the lock low, one hard pop, and we slid inside. The lobby was fishbowl glass, too much exposure, so we cut to the service corridor. It was narrow and concrete, and bright in our NVGs in a way that felt good. Edges I could see, corners I could clear. Holt's breathing sounded like sand moving in a bag. Halperin kept touching the case like it might grow legs and run without him. "Hold," Vega said. "East stairwell. We've got 5, no, 7. No, hell, they're stacking. They're smelling us." We heard them before we saw them. That low chorus, the soft slap of wet feet on tile. I pictured them in my head and felt something about my own feet I didn't like. Keep it small. Do the next correct thing. "Razor," I said. He was already moving. He popped an M84 from his pouch and handed it back to me. "If they push in hard, toss, then move. Don't look." "Tripwire," Holt said. He had 550 cord out, hands moving quick. He tied a line knee-high across the corridor and clipped a grenade to it with practiced fingers. He taped the spoon, left the pin in, and set the tension just so. We'd done this in compounds with men who shot back. It works on things that just run too. They hit the door like rain. The first one shouldered through and fell over the cord. The spoon popped. The grenade jumped and rolled under the next wave like it wanted to be useful. The blast in the hallway was a punch. Overpressure beat against my plates and made my ears ring even through plugs. Razor flashed the M84 into the smoke. The world went white, then green, then static, and we were moving low and fast, past a mess of limbs trying to remember which way was up. We took the next stairwell instead and climbed. 3rd floor, a law office with framed diplomas and a spilled Keurig. 4th, empty cubicles, screensavers still bouncing a logo. 5th, a conference room where someone had set out water and never drank it. I caught my face in the reflection on the glass and looked away. Don't make yourself a character in this. You're a tool. Tools don't have faces. On the 6th, we stopped. The east windows faced the street we needed to cross. Below, the route to the alternate LZ looked like a riverbed stuffed with laundry. Bodies in piles, some still moving, some only being moved by the ones crawling over them. A sedan sat at a bad angle with one tire still spinning like it hadn't decided to quit yet. Vega went prone again and called a rhythm. We move on my mark, 2x2 bounds. Holt covers. Razor in the dock with me first. We cross to that deli with the metal grate and hold until Ghost and Holt are on us. "Copy," I said. "Mark." We went. The street tasted like copper and burned plastic. The first 5 meters were nothing. The next 10 were all hands. Fingers from under cars, fingernails scraping asphalt. Something grabbed my boot and I stamped without looking and felt it crunch. Holt raked the far curb with controlled bursts, the saw doing what it was made to do. That sound, God. That sound. It's a typewriter from hell writing NO across the world. We hit the deli's recessed door and stacked. The grate was down. Razor jammed a spreader bar into the gap and levered up with a groan of metal. Inside was smell and darkness and shelves of things no one wanted anymore. Halperin bumped my shoulder twice, and I realized he was saying thank you without words. I nodded. and we switched places so my plate was toward the street. Second bound, Holt and I crossed while Vega and Razor laid light, precise fire. I kept my steps long and even, letting momentum work, gun high, eyes scanning for the tall ones. The tall ones cover ground faster. One came from a bus doorway like a string had pulled it, and I put one round low to make it stutter, then another high to end the thought. I don't remember their faces. I remember the distance between their feet. It's easier that way. We made the corner and felt the street drop behind us like a lid. For a few seconds, it was just us and brick and the sound of our own blood. Then all the moaning picked a direction that was exactly the direction we had gone. They learn paths, Halprin said, like the words tasted bad. Not learn, that's the wrong verb. They repeat. The virus likes loops. Great, Holt said. Add that to the brochure. We pushed deeper toward the grid Raven gave us. It wasn't far. Distance in cities is an argument with architecture. You can see it, which makes you think you own it. You don't. You rent it one step at a time. At the base of our target building, a brutalist block of concrete with edges like box cutters, we hit the stairwell and found the door chained from the inside. Good news, bad news. Someone had tried to keep something out. The something was now at our backs. Razor went to work. He set a tiny linear charge along the latch, shaped to push the bolt inward, not blast the whole thing open. He taped foam around the edges to damp the report. He looked at me. I nodded. We all turned our faces and opened mouths to save our eardrums. Pop! The door jumped. He kicked it and we slid through. Up again. Up until our thighs burned and Halperin's breath was a whistle. Up until my shoulders started to feel like bags of sand. Up until the stairwell opened onto a roof with a view of the river and a sky that had more ash than stars. This one felt better, higher, fewer approaches, single access point that Razor could blow behind us if it came to that. I keyed the mic. Raven, Ghost 2 on final rooftop, grid as given. Status? Static. Then, Ghost, we've got eyes on your building. You've got a crowd forming on the west and south streets. We can attempt to hover, but the downdraft will pull every mover in a mile. You won't get a clean landing. Fast rope? I asked, hearing my own voice go dry again. Negative at this time. Recommend hold position until density decreases. I looked over the edge. The crowd wasn't just forming. It was accruing, bodies bumping bodies, each new impact adding a little momentum, like marbles rolling toward a drain. The siren on the cruiser finally died somewhere behind us, and the night felt louder for the absence. How long? I asked. No answer, not a refusal. Just the kind of silence that comes when the other guy knows anything he says will be a lie. Copy, I said anyway, because that's what you say when there isn't anything else. We set work to give our hands a job, so our heads didn't go looking for one. Holt staged ammo in 2 piles, linked belts and boxed mags, like he was laying out dinner. Razor rigged the stairwell with a pair of surprises, one concussive, one directional that would sweep the tread faces if something got clever. Vega ranged every roofline and street and then ranged them again, talking distances like a lullaby. I pulled the doc's case off my chest and checked the latches. Still sealed. Still heavy with numbers we could take out of this city and throw like a rock through a window. Halperin stood near the lip and stared down. His hands didn't shake now. Maybe they'd gotten tired of it. They asked us to build a fire alarm, he said. Something you could set off and make the virus run where you wanted. They said it was a fail-safe. They always say that. We warned them it would work both ways. What do you mean, both ways? Holt asked without looking up from the belts. If you pull a crowd to safety, that's good, Halperin said. If you pull a crowd to a kill zone, that's efficient. You can move a city with one tone and a few speakers. If you have air assets, if you have... He bit the rest off. Sorry, I'm talking too much. No, I said. You're saying what we need to hear. He nodded. There's proof in the case. Names, logs, versions. Someone kept tidy records while they made this. It's all very clean. The moan rose below us in waves. You don't need a clock when you have that sound. It tells you time in the slow way. Louder means later. Later means thinner margins. You start counting magazines, and then you start counting half mags, and then you start counting single rounds like they're hours. We didn't fire at first. We let them build at the base of the building, rotting together into a single problem, so we could solve it in one go. When they finally found the inside stairwell and started testing the booby traps with their bodies, Razor looked at me. I nodded. He clicked the remote. The concussive charge went off down in the core, pressure rushing up through the channel like a dragon clearing its throat. Dust coughed out of the access door, and a handful of the closest silhouettes folded like bad chairs. The stairwell went quiet for a breath, then louder. Directional next, Razor said. Not yet, I said. Let them pack in. Make it worth it. We waited. We listened to our own hearts and the shuffle below. We watched the streets fill, and I stopped trying to turn them into numbers and let them be a shape. It helped. When the second charge finally went, it was a spit of light and a hiss and screams that weren't real screams, just air leaving meat. The stairwell choked with what used to be people. Nothing climbed after that for a while. Then the roof edge flooded. Fingers, then arms, then faces lifting into view as they used each other to make stairs. Hold, I said. He was already on the gun. The saw found its happy sound. Long taste, 3 short, long taste. He walked the lane left to right to left, making lines that erased faces. Brass piled around his knees. Sweat ran down his neck, dark and fast. We rotated him like a tire, minute on, minute off. Razor taking the belt when Holt needed water. Vega switching to his sidearm for close heads. Me pushing single shots so brains didn't spray up and blind the next target. It was ugly, but it was work, and work keeps you sane. We did that for a while. I won't say how long. It was long enough for the city to shift colors. The fires turned from white to softer. The sky got less black and more something else. Sirens died. Somewhere, a building collapsed and sent a puff of dust up like it was sighing. When our barrels got hot enough to smoke, we swapped them. When our hands burned through gloves, we wrapped them in gauze and kept going. When Holt laughed, one short, weird bark like a cough, we all pretended we didn't hear it, because sometimes laughter is how your brain taps the glass. Between waves, I keyed the mic. Raven, Ghost 2, We're holding. If you have a window, we can make it. Silence then. Ghost, we copy your hold. You've got a sunrise window. Be ready to move. How ready? I asked. As if they'll stop loving you for 5 minutes, the voice said, and I almost smiled. We reset the belts and repacked the spare mags and topped off what we could. Razor passed out a stack of chem lights and taped them in a line across the roof to mark a landing circle only an idiot or a hero would try. Holt muttered something about hoping we got both. Vega checked his scope one more time and then rested his forehead on his wrist like he was saying a prayer he didn't believe in. I walked to the lip and let myself look. Not count, not measure, just look. A city pulled inside out. Streets full of arms, windows full of faces that were wrong, smoke that smelled like burning plastic and old sugar. Somewhere a radio played 3 notes of a song and then gave up. We hold, I told myself. We hold and we cash out at dawn. I turned back to the team. We're good, I said. My voice sounded like someone who'd been up too long. We keep our circle clean. We keep the dock alive. We don't get cute. We don't get brave. We just do the next correct thing until the sky changes color. Razor nodded. Holt smacked a fresh belt home with a slap that said yes without words. Vega didn't look up, but I saw his mouth move. Copy. Halperin hugged the case to his chest and stared at the chalk circle we'd made with dust. He looked to me like a man who'd started to believe he might see the end of the page. Below us, the moan gathered itself again. It climbed the walls in the air and made the concrete hum under my boots. I felt it in my teeth. The sky went a shade lighter. Sunrise window, Raven said in our ears, quiet like church. On your mark, Ghost. Mark in 5, I said, and lifted my hand where only my team could see it. The city breathed. We breathed back. And the roof waited for the weight of rotors. The sky was still black when I gave the mark, but it wasn't the kind of black that stays. It was thinning at the edges like somebody had taken sandpaper to the night and rubbed until light leaked through. We all felt it, the difference. We'd been fighting for hours. Our gloves were shredded, our ears rang, and every time I blinked, I saw muzzle flash ghosts dancing on the inside of my eyelids. But we weren't done. Not close. Bird inbound, Raven said in my headset. Voice clipped, calm. 2 minutes out. Hold circle. That was a polite way of saying you're about to be the loudest thing in the city. 2 minutes, I repeated. Holt, give me lanes. Razor, check stairwell traps. Vega, already on glass. Vega cut in. His tone didn't change, but I knew what he was seeing. Street densities doubling. They heard the bird, and they had. Even before I caught the thump of rotors rolling in low, the dead below were lifting their heads in unison. Thousands of them, all shifting, drawn like iron to a magnet. They packed the streets so tight their shoulders rubbed, their arms climbed over each other's backs. The sound was the ocean in reverse, waves rushing toward the shore, not away. Saw up, Holt barked, his gun hammered in long sweeps, brass hissing off concrete, links spilling like golden snakes. Muzzle flashes carved light across faces that weren't faces anymore. The front rows fell, tripped, were stepped on by the ones behind them, but still they came. Razor dropped to one knee at the stairwell, shotgun leveled, listening for movement below. Still quiet down here. Won't stay that way. I felt it too, the vibration in the concrete under my boots, like the whole building was humming. Raven, we're gonna need you on top of us, I said into comms. If you hover shy, we're not leaving. Copy Ghost, we're with you. Then I saw it, the shape cutting through smoke, Blackhawk rotors knifing the dawn. The downwash hit us first, grit and ash turning the air into a sandstorm, stinging my eyes through goggles. The moans below swelled into screams, the mob surging, arms reaching, climbing over cars, over each other, trying to claw their way upward toward the vibration. 30 seconds, Raven barked. Circle clean, I shouted back, and all four of us moved like parts in a single machine. Vega dropped targets at distance, clean headshots, measured cadence. Holt ripped the saw until the barrel steamed, then swapped, tossing the glowing pipe aside and locking in the spare without looking. Razor pulled grenades off his rig and rolled them down the far edges of the roof. Each one burst in thunder and flame, shoving back the closest climbers. Halperin hugged his case so tight I could hear the latches creak. His glasses were cracked, his face a mask of grime, but he never let go. The Blackhawk hovered low enough to whip smoke into funnels. A rope dropped, then another. Dock first, I said. Razor hooked Halperin's harness and shoved him toward the rope. For a second I thought the scientist would freeze, fear locking him down. But he climbed, awkward, boots slipping, until the crew chief leaned out and grabbed him by the vest. Case and all, he vanished into the bird. Go, I snapped. Razor went next, moving like he'd done this 1,000 times because he had. Holt followed, saw still slung, climbing hand over hand like the weight didn't matter. Vega covered us, last man as always, his rifle snapping until the mag ran dry, then holstering and leaping for the rope with the smoothness of habit. I was last, always last. The roof was chaos, hands slapping the lip, jaws snapping at air, bodies stacking. They were pouring over like water in a sink. I threw one more grenade down the stairwell, pulled the pin with my teeth, and let it drop. The blast punched my chest as I grabbed the rope. The climb felt like years. My arms screamed. My helmet rattled in the downdraft. I looked down once and wished I hadn't. The swarm had reached the roof in force now, a living carpet of limbs pulling at each other, piling, collapsing, climbing again. They poured into the blast crater I'd left like it wasn't even there. Hands grabbed my vest, real hands, living. Crew chief and Holt hauling me in like a catch on the line. I tumbled into the bay, boots kicking. The world snapped into deafening rotor wash and hot metal. We didn't cheer. Nobody said a damn thing. Through the open side, the city fell away. Streets packed with bodies blurred into gray. Fires burned low, smoke bleeding into the sky that was finally barely blue. The moans chased us even up here, vibrating in my chest like they'd gotten inside the bone. Halperin sat hunched, case between his knees, eyes shut like he was praying or cursing. Razor checked his shotgun, then checked it again. Holt leaned against the wall, sweat cutting clean lines through the soot on his face. Vega stared out the door, expression carved from stone, rifle across his lap. I pulled my headset off and just listened. The rotors, the hum. My own pulse slowing, barely. Command came through the intercom, sterile and cold. Package secure? Not men secure, not team secure. Just the package. I looked at Halperin, looked at the case, looked at my brothers, alive, every one of them. Package secure, I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. No one asked about the bodies in the street. No one asked about the city. No one asked what 12 hours in hell felt like. But I knew. We all knew. And as the Black Hawk banked east, leaving the dead to their chorus, I realized something colder than the wind through the open bay. We hadn't survived the outbreak. We'd just been part of its first field test,